My name is Clara Monroe, and this is the beginning of the story I tell when someone wonders why a woman like me chooses to live alone in a quiet apartment, far from her family, far from the noise of obligation, and far from the people who were supposed to love her first. I always begin where it all started, inside the small, narrow house on Linden Street in Madison, Wisconsin, in the United States of America. That house shaped me more than any job, school, or friend ever could. Even now, when I close my eyes, I can picture every uneven line in the walls and every crack in the old floors that groaned under my childhood footsteps. The house looked as if it leaned slightly to one side, the way tired people lean when they've been standing too long. Every winter, the paint curled and peeled from the cold. The roof shook when the heavy snow melted, letting out sounds like slow, aching sighs. Even as a child, I knew the house was old and worn. But it was the only place I had, so I tried to love it the best I could. I told myself the creaking floors were just the house talking to me, and the broken screen door was simply part of its charm. But while I saw a home, my parents saw numbers. To them, that house was not a shelter, it was an investment. A piece of property. A list of costs and expected returns. My father, Martin, loved to sit in his brown chair with a small notebook where he kept track of every bill. He counted money the way some people count blessings, carefully, lovingly, and with full attention. My mother, Ruth, had a memory sharper than any calculator. She knew the price of every spoon, every curtain, every candle on the table, and even the price of the wooden frame around our family photo. When she dusted the shelves, she didn't tell me stories about her childhood. She told me how much each item cost and how hard it was to replace. They valued money so much that sometimes I wondered if they liked it more than they liked me. When I came home with an A on a test, they only smiled if the grade hinted that I might win a scholarship later. When I asked for new shoes because my feet hurt, my mother crossed her arms and said, "Do you think dollars grow on trees, Clara?" I never knew how to answer that question, so I simply lowered my head and wore the old shoes a little longer. Love in that house was not free. It always came with a price tag written in invisible ink. If I helped with chores, my father would pat my shoulder and say, "That's my girl." But if I needed something, a school trip, a book, even a haircut, my mother would sigh loudly, as if I had asked for gold bars instead of basic things a child needs. I learned early that needing anything made me a burden, and that giving made me a good daughter. So I began giving. Not because I wanted to, but because I wanted peace. When I turned 15, I decided I would find my own money. I started babysitting for our neighbor, Nora Henson, who had 2 loud little boys and a messy living room that always smelled faintly of crayons and toast. Nora was kind, and she paid me $40 every Saturday. I kept every dollar in a small metal box under my bed. My parents never knew how proud I felt every time the lid closed, and the money inside grew heavier. The next year, I found a part-time job at a small cafe near the bus station. I worked weekends, refilling coffee cups and wiping down tables stained with jam and crumbs. The job was tiring, but it felt like freedom. I liked the sound of the cash register opening, the warm smell of fresh bread, and the feeling of earning something that belonged only to me. But my parents had a way of finding out about extra money, and soon they began asking me for small amounts, just to help with groceries. At first, I gave them $20 here and $30 there. Then little by little, the small amounts grew larger. By 19, I was studying full-time at a small college in Davenport, Iowa, while working 2 jobs to pay my tuition. Every month, without fail, I sent $200 back home. It seemed fair at the time. My parents said they needed help, and I didn't want to disappoint them. But $200 turned into $400, and $400 turned into $600, until one day, I realized I was sending more money home than I was saving for myself. Somehow, giving had become my habit. When I finished college and found my first real job as an office assistant in Cleveland, Ohio, I felt proud of myself for the first time in years. My salary was modest but steady. I could finally afford rent, groceries, and the occasional small treat. But as soon as my parents heard the amount I made, they began asking for more. "Just for this month," they said. "Just a little help," they said. Those words followed me everywhere. Before I knew it, I was sending $1,000 every month to support the house on Linden Street, paying for the gas bill, the water bill, the repairs, the internet, and anything else that just happened to come up. My parents called it helping the family, but it felt like I was paying rent on a childhood that was never truly mine. The only thing I ever bought that was fully, completely mine was my car. I bought it in Richmond, Virginia, a used silver sedan with soft seats and a quiet engine. I paid $9,500 for it, all with money I had saved myself. When I signed the papers, I felt something inside me open, like a window letting in fresh air. That car represented every hour I worked, every tired morning I woke early, every dream I kept alive even when life felt heavy. I named her Luna because she reminded me of the moon, steady, silent, and always there to guide me home. Luna was the first thing in my life that felt like freedom and the first thing no one else controlled. She was mine, just mine. And I didn't realize then how much that fact would upset my parents one day, or how that silver car would be the beginning of the end of everything I once called family. The real break in my family did not happen quietly. It happened on a bright, almost fake happy day in Denver, Colorado, the kind of day where the sky looks painted and the air feels sharp with sunshine. It was supposed to be a celebration, my younger sister Ivy's 25th birthday. I had flown in from Providence, Rhode Island, where I was living and working at the time, and I told myself that this visit might bring us closer again. I didn't expect a miracle, but I hoped that maybe, just maybe, my parents would treat me like their daughter instead of their walking bank account. I had already paid $800 toward the party, food, decorations, and the fancy photo booth my mother wanted. I didn't complain. I told myself that birthdays are special, and sisters deserve nice things. I even brought Ivy a gift, a delicate gold necklace with a small moon charm. It cost $120, and I had chosen it because the moon reminded me of my car, Luna, the first thing I ever bought for myself that felt like freedom. When I pulled up to the old house on Linden Street, my mother was already standing at the window. As soon as she saw me, she rushed outside. Her eyes went straight to my car, ignoring me for a moment, the way she always did when money or property was nearby. "Still the same old car, Clara?" she asked, raising her eyebrows. "Yes, Mom," I said, trying to keep my tone easy. "She still runs well." My father came out next. He walked around Luna slowly, touching the hood as if checking the paint. He didn't greet me. He didn't ask how my flight was. Instead, he said, "You know, Ivy doesn't have a car." I nodded because of course I knew. Ivy took the bus to her part-time job at a little design shop downtown. She sometimes borrowed rides from friends. She had dropped hints about wanting her own car, but I simply couldn't afford to buy one for her. I was already helping too much: rent, bills, travel, and the $1,000 I sent my parents every single month. I barely had enough left for myself, but they never seemed to notice that part. Inside, guests began arriving. The house filled with balloons, loud music, and the kind of laughter people force when they want to impress others. My mother moved through the crowd like a ship captain, steering everything, checking every dish, and making sure people knew the party was thanks to Clara's help. She said it with pride, but also with a hint of ownership, as if I were simply fulfilling a duty she expected from me. I tried to enjoy myself. I hugged Ivy, who looked lovely in a pale pink dress. We chatted about her online design classes, her dreams of starting her own little studio someday, and how she hoped to travel to Europe one day, maybe Paris or London. I smiled, happy to see her excited. She deserved nice things. She deserved better parents too, but that was not her fault. After we cut the cake, yellow cake with lemon frosting, Ivy's favorite, my mother clapped her hands loudly. The room grew quieter. People turned to look at her. I thought she was going to offer a toast. But instead, she said, "Everyone, please listen. We have a special surprise today." She turned toward me with a bright, wide smile. It looked like a smile you would see on a poster, not a real one. "Clara has something amazing to give Ivy today." My heart stopped. I frowned, confused. "I do." My father stepped beside her, lifting his chin. He spoke with the deep, serious voice he used when he made big statements. Yes, he said. Clara has decided to give her car to Ivy as a birthday gift. Isn't that wonderful? The room fell silent. Ivy's hands flew to her mouth, and her eyes filled with hope so fast that it nearly broke me. A small gasp drifted across the room. All the guests were staring at me, waiting, expecting, already picturing Ivy driving away and Luna. My stomach twisted into a knot. I looked at my parents, trying to understand what was happening. What are you talking about? I asked quietly. My mother's smile didn't move, but her eyes sharpened. She whispered, "Come on, Clara. Don't make this ugly. Ivy deserves it. You can buy a new one. You work full-time in an office in America now. You make enough." I felt dozens of eyes pinned to my back like heavy stones. For a moment, a long, familiar moment, I almost caved. I almost nodded and said yes. Years of bending, obeying, pleasing, and apologizing nearly dragged me back into that place where I did anything to avoid my parents' disappointment. But then, through the window, I saw Luna. My Luna. I saw the late-night shifts, the cheap meals, the student debt, the tired eyes in the mirror, the double shifts at the cafe, the sacrifices I made to buy her. I remembered all the times I had to say no to myself so I could say yes to my parents' endless demands. And I realized something. Saying yes now would destroy something inside me that I could never repair. So I took a breath, steadying my voice. "No," I said, loud enough for the room to hear. "I'm not giving Ivy my car." The silence changed. It grew sharper, harder. A cold wave rolled through the room. My father's face turned red. "What did you say?" I said no. I repeated. "I love Ivy, but this car is mine. I paid for it. I need it. And I already helped pay for this party." Ivy looked as if someone had taken something precious from her right in front of her. My mother's smile vanished. The guests looked uncomfortable, shifting in their seats, staring at the floor. My father's voice rose like a storm. "We have no relationship with you anymore, you greedy woman." His words hit me like a slap across the face. My breath caught. My mother crossed her arms. "After all we did for you," she said coldly, "we gave you a home. We fed you. We raised you. And you can't even give your own sister a car?" Her words were full of guilt and blame, twisted together like a chain around my neck. I felt my hands tremble, but I forced myself to speak. "I have sent you over $1,000 every month for years," I said. "I paid your bills. I paid for repairs. I paid for this entire party. Don't say I give you nothing." My father turned away from me as if I were a stranger on the street. He lifted his hand and waved me off. "You are dead to us," he said. "Take your greedy heart and get out." And that was it. No discussion, no love, no hesitation. I picked up my bag and walked out of the house. Ivy called my name softly, but I kept moving. No one else tried to stop me. Not even my mother. Not even my father. I climbed into Luna, my hands shaking so hard that I could barely grip the wheel. I drove away from Linden Street and cried the entire flight back to Providence. By the time I got home, my peace, my quiet, I knew something inside me had changed forever. A line had been drawn. A final line, and when I sat on my bed that night, staring at the ceiling, I made a decision that felt both terrifying and freeing. I would never send them another dollar again. The first month after the birthday disaster felt heavier than any month I had lived before. It was as if the air itself changed, becoming thicker, harder to breathe. I kept expecting something to happen, some explosion of noise from my parents, some call or message filled with blame. But the silence came first, and the silence was strange. For years, I had lived inside their demands, the bills, the needs, the just this once money transfers. Suddenly, there were no instructions for me to follow. No list of things I was required to pay. That silence felt like standing in the middle of a wide, empty field. I didn't know whether to feel terrified or free. On the first week of the month, I did something I had never done before. I did not send the $1,000 I always sent. I sat at my small kitchen table in my little apartment in Providence, Rhode Island, and stared at my laptop screen where my online banking page glowed softly. My finger hovered over the keys, but I didn't type anything. The transfer that had become part of my routine, like brushing my teeth or locking my door, simply didn't happen. By the end of the week, my phone buzzed with a message from my mother. "Did you forget to send it?" Just 6 words. No greeting. No softness. No, "Hello, how are you doing?" Only the question that mattered to her. I read the message, felt my chest tighten, and then put the phone face down on the table. I didn't respond. I didn't explain. I didn't apologize. For the first time in years, I let her wait. The second week passed, and I heard nothing. Not from my mother, not from my father. I kept expecting a storm, but they gave me only silence, cold and sharp like winter wind. Then one evening, as I was washing dishes, my phone rang. My father's name lit up the screen. I stood there, my hands dripping with warm water, staring at the call. It felt like a test I needed to pass. After several rings, the call stopped, and I exhaled a shaky breath I didn't know I was holding. A moment later, a voicemail arrived. I listened to it once. Only once. "Don't act like a child, Clara. We are waiting." That was the entire message. "No, we miss you." "No, are you okay?" Only the reminder that I was expected to pay. I didn't call back. The third week was when the tone changed. Another message arrived from my mother, this time longer, heavier, dripping with fear covered by anger. "The electric bill is due. The water bill too. They are both in your name. If you don't pay, they will cut us off." I stared at the screen, feeling a dull ache run through me. Years ago, I had put the bills in my name because I had a better credit score. It had been my idea, my choice, my mistake, because it tied me to that house like a chain around my ankle. I thought helping meant love. But now those same bills were being used as a rope to pull me back. I sat down on my couch and pressed my palms into my eyes. I knew what I had to do. It took me the rest of the afternoon to call each company, electric, water, gas, internet, and remove my name from every account. Each call made my hands shake, but I kept going. I told every representative the same thing. "Please transfer this account to Martin Monroe. He will be the new contact." I gave them his number. I listened as they confirmed the changes. When I hung up the final call, my hands were trembling so badly I had to sit for several minutes. But underneath the shaking was a rising sense of strength. I had freed myself from responsibilities that were never truly mine, and then came the knock. It was the first day of the new month. Early morning. I had just made coffee, the sun barely touching the window, when a sharp, fast pounding hit my apartment door. Not a polite knock. Not a visitor's tap. It was the kind of knock that belongs to someone who believes they have every right to walk right into your life without permission. I knew that sound. I knew it instantly. My stomach dropped. My breath froze. But I still walked to the door. When I opened it, my parents stood there on the small hallway landing. They looked as out of place in my apartment building as wolves in a library. My mother's face was pale and tight, as if she had been crying or shouting, or both. My father looked worn, angry, and strangely desperate. They had traveled all the way from Madison, Wisconsin, to Providence, uninvited, unannounced, carrying their expectations like luggage. Behind them, at the far end of the hallway, I could see Luna parked in her usual spot in the lot outside. My chest stung at the sight of her, my little piece of freedom, now caught in the middle of this confrontation. My mother spoke first. "Clara, we need to talk." Her voice sounded rehearsed. Not warm, not kind, just controlled. I stepped aside only enough for them to stand in the doorway, but I didn't let them enter. This was my home. My space. The one place where I wasn't under their thumb. "What do you want?" I asked. My father lifted a stack of papers. I recognized them even before he spoke. Overdue notices, warnings, and bills. "They cut our power for 3 days," he said, shaking the papers. "The house payment is late. We owe $2,400 right now. And more is coming next week. You know you have the money. You always have. We came here for you to fix this." It wasn't a request. It was an order, delivered in the same tone he used when telling me to clean my childhood room. My mother stepped closer, touching her chest lightly, as if she wanted to seem gentle.
"We're sorry," she said, "about the party."
We shouldn't have shouted. We were just excited. You know we love you. But we're in trouble now. Help us this month, send some money, and everything can go back to normal. Her voice trembled at the exact right places, but I felt nothing from her words. Nothing honest, nothing true. I realized then why they were standing at my door. They were not here because they missed me. They were here because they missed my money. And suddenly everything inside me became clear. I took a slow breath. My voice came out steady and calm. When you asked me to give away my car, I said, you didn't ask me at all. You announced it to a room full of people. When I said no, you called me greedy. You told me I was dead to you. My father waved a hand dismissively. Those were just words said in anger. I shook my head.
No.
You meant them. You only regret it now because you need something. My mother's lips tightened. You're being dramatic. I felt something shift inside me. Something strong, something new. I have supported you for years, I said. I paid for the house, the bills, the repairs, the groceries, the party. I gave so much that I barely had anything left for myself. And you never cared, not once, about how tired I was or how much I struggled. You only cared about the money I sent. My father's eyes hardened. His voice snapped like a whip. So what? That's what children are for. You owe us your life. That was the moment I knew. There was no saving this. No fixing it. No more pretending. I stepped back, not to invite them in, but to close the door. I don't owe you my life, I said softly. I gave you love, and you treated me like a bank. I will not give you money anymore.
Not today.
Not next month. Not ever. My mother's face twisted with anger. So, you're really going to let us suffer? You heartless girl. Tears burned my eyes, but my voice didn't shake. I'm going to let you live your own life, I said. And I'm going to live mine. My father slammed his fist against the door frame. We came here in panic, and this is how you treat your parents. I swallowed. I treated you well for years. You just never noticed. Then I did the hardest, bravest thing I have ever done. I turned away and slammed the door shut. Their voices rose into shouts, echoing down the hallway. But I leaned against the door, shaking from head to toe, and I did not open it again.
Not that day.
Not ever. The months after I shut the door on my parents felt strangely quiet. At first, the silence was almost painful. I had lived so long inside their constant demands, monthly transfers, sudden emergencies, guilt-filled messages, that the absence of their voices felt like a missing sound, like a radio someone had switched off after years of noise. Every night, I lay awake waiting for my phone to buzz with a new accusation. Some nights, I picked up my phone with the silly thought of sending them $500 just in case, a habit so deep it felt automatic. But each time, I stopped myself. I remembered the birthday party. I remembered being called a greedy woman. I remembered the way they looked at me, not with love, but with hunger for money that was never enough. During that time, I decided to do something unexpected. I found a therapist. Her name was Elaine Carter, and she worked in Portland, Maine, in a small office painted in warm yellow colors. She charged $90 per session, and for the first time in my life, I paid for something that helped me instead of someone else. Elaine had gentle eyes, the kind that made you feel seen without judgment. During our third session, she asked me a question that lingered in my mind long after I left her office. When was the first moment you felt your parents valued money more than you? The memories came quickly. The school trip I wasn't allowed to join because it wasted money, even though the very next week my parents bought a new television. The Christmas when I wanted a winter coat, but they said the cost was too high, and then spent $40 on decorations nobody needed. The way my mother bragged about my salary to every neighbor, as if my worth lived only in the number printed on my paychecks. And the way my father only called me proud when the money I sent increased. They always chose money, I told Elaine. And I never wanted to admit it. She nodded softly. Then when did you choose yourself? The answer felt simple and heavy. The day I said no, I whispered. After that appointment, something inside me began to change. I developed new routines, smaller, quieter, healthier ones. I made coffee without rushing. I walked around my neighborhood in Providence, Rhode Island, listening to the sound of my own breathing instead of someone else's demands. Most importantly, I put aside the $1,000 I used to send home every month. Every deposit into my savings account felt like a brick in a new foundation I was laying for myself. After a year of this, I looked at my account and saw over $12,000 sitting there, untouched, unclaimed, and fully mine. It felt unreal. For the first time in my life, money meant possibility instead of obligation. I used part of that money to make a big step, one I had dreamed about secretly. I put a down payment on a small 2-bedroom house in Savannah, Georgia. It wasn't fancy, but it was charming with its little white porch and warm wooden floors. The floors creaked when I walked, but it was a friendly kind of creaking, not like the tired groan of my childhood home. I painted the walls soft colors, light blue for the bedroom, pale cream for the kitchen. Every chair, every mug, every lamp was chosen because I loved it, not because it was cheap or because someone expected me to justify it. Sometimes people ask, do you ever feel guilty for cutting off your parents? They ask like I must carry a heavy shame for choosing myself. But the truth is simple. I didn't cut them off because they were struggling. I didn't cut them off because they asked for help. I cut them off because they only loved me when I paid. There is a difference between need and greed. A big one. My parents crossed that line long before that birthday party. I still help people sometimes. I sent $300 to my friend Lucas in Boston, Massachusetts, when his dog needed surgery. I lent $200 to my coworker Marina when her landlord suddenly raised her rent. Helping them felt warm and genuine. I gave because I wanted to, not because I feared being punished if I didn't. 2 years after everything fell apart, I took my first real vacation. I flew to London, England, and walked along the river holding crisp 20-pound notes I had exchanged myself. I bought a simple mug for £10 and a paperback novel for £15, smiling at the small joy of using my money for me. As I stood on the bridge looking at the water below, I thought of my parents back in America. I wondered if they still lived in the house on Linden Street. I wondered if they told people I abandoned them, or if they kept the truth quiet out of pride. Maybe they still call me greedy. Maybe they say they lost a daughter. Maybe they blame me for every bill they now have to pay themselves. But I know the truth. I was never their bank. I was their child. And they forgot that simple fact. So yes, I closed the account. I closed the door. I closed the chapter. Not because I hate them, but because I finally love myself more than I love their approval. That is the price of freedom, and it is worth every single dollar.